Hi, third graders. Today we are going to be talking about a genre, and this genre is all about legends. So today I'm going to read to you about one legend, Paul Bunyan. You're going to listen to a video about a second legend, Johnny Appleseed. So just so you know, a legend is a story told from generation to generation until someone writes it down. Legends may be based on truth, but they're mostly fiction. Legends often are about great heroes who carry out bigger than life actions, and they usually are set in real locations. The theme of legends are usually based on what a culture values and finds important. We're going to read Paul Bunyan and then think what details from the text make you know this is a legend. Remember, a legend is bigger than life, meaning it seems more outrageous than something that could really happen. Paul Bunyan and the Great Lakes, retold by Don Abrams. The first thing most people noticed about Paul Bunyan was that he was big. Now, when I say big, I mean huge, gigantic. Everything he did big. He could walk a mile by just taking a few steps. His clothes had to be especially made, of course. 20 tailors had to sew together the canvas sails from 5 or 6 sailing ships to make one of his shirts. The second thing people noticed was that he was usually accompanied by his pet ox, Babe. Babe was big too. He had to be big to keep up with Paul. Babe was as strong as he was big. Paul could hitch Babe up to one of the winding, curving roads, and Babe could pull it straight. Oh, and did I mention that Babe was bright blue? So, some facts to help us know this is a legend is that he was huge, gigantic. He could walk a mile by taking a few steps. That's bigger than life, right? 5 or 6 sailing ships to make his shirt, bigger than life. And his blue ox Babe, obviously fiction. So these are some elements to help us know this story is a legend. Babe wasn't just a pet. He was a working animal. That was useful because Paul was a lumberjack. Paul decided to hire a crew of lumberjacks. He had to build a lumber camp to give his crew a place to live. He found a nice spot and set the men to work, building using lumber they had cut down themselves. A camp needs a good supply of drinking water, so Paul dug out a huge reservoir to catch rainwater and to hold water from the number of rivers that emptied into it. People called it Lake Ontario, after some Native American words that mean Great Lake. That worked fine for a while, but Babe could drink half the lake himself every morning before breakfast. So Paul dug another reservoir and then another. They were also given Native American names, Lake Erie and Lake Huron. Paul's lumber camp was growing too. He had more men and more animals than ever before. So he dug Lake Michigan and then finally Lake Superior. Now, he had a really good water supply. As I said, Paul did everything big. So this legend is saying Paul is creating all of these lakes for his workers, himself, and of course, his blue ox Babe. Now, we're next going to be reading about Johnny Appleseed. Johnny Appleseed was also a legend because he did something that was bigger than life. So if you go visit different places in the United States, you might see Lake Michigan and Lake Erie and Lake Huron and Lake Superior. Those are all true lakes, and they're made by the legend Paul Bunyan. Thank you for joining me. We're going to move on to Johnny Appleseed. All right, here we go. Johnny Appleseed.
I'm growing an apple tree, just like Johnny Appleseed. Who was Johnny Appleseed? John Chapman was born in 1774 in Leominster, Massachusetts. He grew up on a small farm. When Johnny was older, he worked at an apple orchard and learned how to plant and grow apple trees. When he was 18 years old, Johnny began traveling around the United States. He went to different places and started apple tree nurseries. Not exactly, Moby. A plant nursery is a safe place to grow and raise young plants. Sometimes Johnny bartered or traded his plants with things he needed, such as food and clothing. But he was often generous and gave away his trees. People started calling him Johnny Appleseed. What was Johnny Appleseed like? Johnny Appleseed loved nature and thought that all living things should be treated with respect. He was kind to animals and didn't eat meat. He treated Native Americans with respect during a time when many settlers did not. Johnny Appleseed believed that people should only use what they really need. He wore old clothes and often went barefoot in the summer to save the leather on his shoes. Not quite, Moby. What are some of the stories about Johnny Appleseed? There are many stories about Johnny Appleseed, but not all of them are true. He probably didn't wear a pot on his head. There's a folk tale about how a snake tried to bite his foot, but couldn't because his skin was so tough. Right, Moby. That story is not true. There are also stories about how he kept a wolf as a pet. A tall tale is a story that is being told as true, but it's exaggerated and hard to believe. Johnny Appleseed loved animals, and he might have saved a wolf caught in a trap. The news might have gotten around, and people changed part of the stories until it became a tall tale. Why is Johnny Appleseed important? Johnny Appleseed was a wanderer and often moved from place to place. During the late 1800s, he started apple tree nurseries wherever he went. In Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. He often talked to people about leading simple, peaceful lives and respecting each other. I can't wait until this tree grows apples. Then we can make apple juice, and apple sauce, and apple pie, and apple crisp. Oh, and baked apples, and apple donuts, and apple bread. I think I'm getting hungry.
All right, so next you're going to take a quick quiz about legends like Paul Bunyan and Johnny Appleseed.